Welcome to the Kingdom Culture Podcast that was created on purpose with a purpose to empower, uplift, and guide others to the center of God's perfect will. Kingdom Culture family, welcome back to the Kingdom Culture Podcast. This is episode 6 of the podcast, and I cannot believe we're already here, 6 weeks in. And I truly hope that you've been gaining some value from the podcast. This week, I wanted to talk about communication and how to cultivate a safe environment for yourself, with your friends, your relationships, your marriage, etc. And me growing up in a Hispanic household, I never truly felt safe enough to be able to say, hey, you know what, I'm going through this and I don't know what to do with it, or I never knew how to actually express myself correctly and effectively to be able to work through a lot of things growing up. So what is a good communication skills, and how do you cultivate that environment? It could be hard, but it's more of being able to express yourself and let others express themselves around you so that they feel heard, understood, valued, and you guys can actually work towards resolutions instead of fighting each other or arguing. The best way that I can explain this in my life is I truly had to tune into it in my marriage because growing up, my mom and I really never talked. We never really sat down and said, hey, Mom, this is what's going on with me. I have these thoughts, I have these emotions, and I don't know what to do with them. Like, we've never had those conversations because, as you know, if you're Hispanic, like, we are taught to get over it quick. Like, if something bad happens, it happens. Accept it and then move forward. Like, don't let that stop you. La vida sigue. Quédate duro, make sure that you have everything going on for yourself and don't ever give up. That's the mindset that I grew up in. Like, it doesn't matter. Your feelings don't matter. You just got to keep going because nobody cares about how you feel. And that's how we grew up. And, growing up, we had a rough upbringing. So when I got married, a lot of those things kind of leaked into my marriage. I wasn't able to communicate effectively. I wasn't able to tell my husband, like, hey, this is actually what the real problem is. We need to fix it. Instead, we would kind of bicker a lot in our first year of marriage. And we've never been people to scream at each other or anything else like that. We're best friends. We've always been able to just talk things out. But the communication part of it was not as effective as we would have liked it to be. So, we've been married now for almost 4 years. And throughout those 4 years, we've been able to cultivate different things, implement different things for us that works. And actually learning through that, I've been able to do that with my mom, friendships and everything else, colleagues. And it's been a big blessing, right? So Sammy and I, we come from different backgrounds. And at first, it was just really hard because he's Puerto Rican, I'm Mexican, right? And we grew up differently. I grew up pretty much, my mom let me do whatever I wanted. But my mom was there. She was present. He grew up by himself. He actually got kicked out of his house when he was 15 because he chose a certain lifestyle that his parents did not agree with. So he had to grow up taking care of himself, having a character of having to be tough all the time, having to be assertive, having to have authority, and not letting anybody, see his weak side or his emotions or anything like that. So 2 different backgrounds, living in one household. How do you make that better? So for me, I actually, just had to have active listening with him. So active listening is actually like to pay full attention to the other person when they're speaking without interrupting or trying to put your point across after they say something. This could be super difficult because I feel like as humans, we try to defend our point of view, but it's really important that you actually are active listening to the other person because you need to understand their perspective. You need to be able to actually hear what they're saying, what the actual problem is, so that you're able to, at the end, take everything in and work towards a resolution. So, instead of jumping in when you hear something you don't like or don't agree with, sit back, take a moment, actually listen to what your partner, friend, or whoever is saying, and be attentive. Because I feel like in arguments, we kind of just get stuck in one mindset. I get blinded by that. So being an active listener has really been a muscle that I've been working on, and it's been great. Another thing that we've been able to cultivate is open and honest communication, which can be hard because maybe you don't want to hurt your partner's feelings, maybe you don't want to hurt your friend's feelings or whoever, but you have to be very honest and very open, and you have to be vulnerable enough to say, this is where I am, this is what's happening, and why. It's not for you to be seen as weak, and so it's very important for you to be able to do that with people. And me growing up, I never really truly was like that. I never was able to say, hey, I don't like that. I kind of just walked through life with whatever, that it's okay. If they do that to me, I'll just do it back to them, when in reality I should have been like, hey, you know what, that really doesn't go well with me, can we work on that? So being very vulnerable can be hard, right? Because we get scared of being judged. We get scared of looking like we're weak. We get scared of actually somebody knowing us for us. So cultivating that safe space and being vulnerable is very important. And as well as the other person, right? Because if the other person is not aware of the fact that you want honest and open communication, they probably will not do that. So it's really important for you to sit down and say, hey, you know what? I really value you. We really have to work through this. Can we just be honest and open with no judgment? I'll give you your time to speak and I'll have my time to speak. And you just kind of use that to be able to work towards a resolution. But it's very, very important that you're honest. You're not here to hurt each other's feelings. You're not here to judge each other. You're here to look for a resolution. And so having that in mind helps you cultivate that nice environment, and you feel safe doing it, right? Because you trust that the other person is actually also listening to you, and two, being super honest about where they're at. And that way you have a better understanding of their perspectives, of their assumptions, because sometimes we do assume, but we shouldn't, right? So the open and honest communication helps you allows for you to not assume anything. So be transparent and truthful about your thoughts, feelings, and concerns. Another thing that I've actually really dove into is nonverbal communication. So I've actually learned to pay attention to body language, facial expressions, and my husband's tone of voice, friends, whoever. This helps a lot because it has a lot of information. So I actually had to be aware of my own body language too. The tones that I speak, the facial expressions that I have, everything nonverbal is actually communicating something back. So a really cool book that I actually read about this was Women, what is it called? Women Are for Venus, Men Are for Mars. And so it talks about how men and women communicate, and how our body language and everything else is different. We look for different cues to make sure that somebody is listening, as well as men. And so that book really opened my mind to be able to communicate with others better, because sometimes as women, we probably take things a little bit more to heart than men. We're a little bit more emotional, right? So we have to make sure that we know that the other person is listening. Women, if you're married, I don't know how many times you've felt this, but you feel like your husband is not listening. You feel like he's not fully present. And that's only because you don't get the body language cues that you're looking for. Same thing with men. How many of you have been, having a conversation with a woman or something, and she's like, why aren't you listening to me? And in the background of your head, you're probably like, but I am. So really honing into those skills and being aware of nonverbal communication can help out a ton, so I really recommend that you guys start looking into that and start paying attention to your partner. What are their cues, what are their, the way that they sit, when they're talking to you. Do they need you to be fully like face to face? Do you guys just be side to side? When they talk, are they playing with their hands a lot? Like, all of these things help you understand the person better. So always, 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 pay attention to nonverbal cues. Another thing that we've been able to do a lot is using I statements. So I statements express your feelings and needs because you say I need, and you avoid sounding accusatory. So if you use I feel, I am in need of, I just have this thing that is bothering me, it kind of takes away the blame of the other person. You can't say, you're making me feel this way. You did this, so this makes me feel. Like, don't do that, because at that point, you're actually not looking for a resolution. You're just blaming somebody else. So using I statements help the conversation and help you to cultivate a sense of like, what are my actual feelings? Is this really that important? Is this really that deep? So taking time to really sit with yourself and realize, like, okay, what is the real issue here? What do I actually have to communicate? And using the I statement helps you kind of, break that down, and you're able to communicate better, right? So using I statements instead of you or blaming is a big, big help. I feel like for this, it really helped me with my mom, because her and I really never had a conversation of like, hey mom, like, I feel like you leaving me when I was a child really, really messed up my self-worth and the way that I look at myself, because I felt rejected from the beginning. So when I first started learning about this and I started cultivating that relationship with my mom, I really took this I statement thing and made it mine, so that she didn't feel guilty. She didn't feel like, she failed me. She didn't feel less. I didn't want her to feel like guilt, mom guilt, because I'm a mom. I totally get it. Mom guilt it happens. It's not the greatest thing, but and so honing into this I statement thing, I've been able to talk to her longer, and I've been able to work through things with her and heal from my childhood. So this I statement thing is super, and I'm so happy, that I learned about how to communicate properly, because now, if I am feeling some sort of way, I just call her, and we'll be on the phone for like hours. I truly, truly love it, and it's never too late. It's never too late to like dive into this and like get to know yourself, so that you know what you need from every person you encounter. It's been amazing. I love my mom so much. She's my best friend. Point number 5 that I want to bring is conflict resolution. Remember, as I said in the beginning, the reason why you're communicating with somebody, especially with friendships and in marriages and relationships, it's because something is bothering you. It's because you want to have resolution to it. It's not for you to feel like you need to be right. And as humans, I think sometimes we can get really stuck on no, what I think is right, my opinion is right, what I want is right, and you don't have any say in it. Instead of battling each other, you need to find resolution. The point of having good communication and expressing yourself is to be able to find a medium where both people are able to co-live together, right? Because arguing shouldn't be difficult. And that's what I've learned in my marriage. So cultivating this space, this environment has really been helpful, because now we don't blame each other. There's no blame, there is no assumptions, there is no judgment, there is no I in our marriage, because yes, we're two individuals, but at the end of the day, we want to become one and be a healthy relationship for each other. We want to be supportive. We want to make sure that we're there for one another. And so instead of blaming each other and going this way, we actually come this way, have the difficult conversations in a safe space, and we look for a resolution. So, having conflict resolution skills is learning how to solve disagreements constructively, seeking compromise and common ground, right? That is the main goal of you having to express yourself with conflict. I think that in our marriage, it was really hard at first because, one, our Spanish is totally different. So we had some communication barriers with the way that we would express ourselves. He would say something and I thought he said something else, or I would say something and he thought it meant something else. So we truly now sit down, and if something comes off as hard, we stop, we ask questions. What do you mean? Or where does that come from? Or what made you think that I said that? Or why did you think I made you feel this way? So our conflict resolution is always making sure that we understand what the other person is saying, and we do not judge or assume that the other person's trying to hurt us, right? So with my husband, him growing up in an environment where he had to have a lot of authority, I had to make sure that he knew that I wasn't coming after him. I had to make sure that the way that I communicated to him didn't sound like I wanted to be right. And with me, I needed to make sure that he knew that the way that he talked to me, the way that he used certain words, and the tone of voices that he used needed to be a certain way for me to actually receive what he was trying to tell me, right? So as you grow up and you start learning about your communication skills and how you want to communicate with others and how they communicate with you, what are some things that you actually need to be able to receive what the other person is saying, and how can you let them know, hey, I didn't like the tone of voice that you used with this. How can we work on that? But at the end of the day, it's always about finding resolution to conflict. Always, always, always. It's not about you being right or blaming the other person, ever. We also have to learn to not take things so personal, right? Because two different people can get really complex, but you're always going to have your individuality, and I don't want you to lose that, right? Don't ever lose your individuality. Don't ever feel like you need to change a certain thing. It's always about coming to a common ground. It's not about you having to change yourself 100%, because I feel like in marriage, a lot of us can feel like we need to lose who we are or our values or the way that we, see things, because we can't come to resolve a conflict or disagreement. But in reality, it's all about creating the safe space to communicate correctly, so that you're not feeling like you're not heard, or you're not feeling like, oh, I give him more than he gives me, or anything like that. It's all about communication. So what can you do to cultivate those things with your partner, your friends, colleagues, whatever else, right? And the last thing I want to talk about, I will always bring back to the Lord, because that's what's helped me cultivate a better life for myself, and it has really given me wisdom to be able to know how to be with other people. So if you're not, if you don't believe in God, that's totally okay. But there is a biblical text, and it's found in Proverbs 16:24, and it says, "Gracious words are a honeycomb, sweet to the soul and healing to the bones." This text emphasizes the healing and uplifting power of kind and gracious words. We win nothing by arguing to win, but rather to know how to support each other and understand where conflict is. This verse, I love it because it hones into the truth of, I can communicate better so that it doesn't sound like I'm coming after you. I can use kind words to be able to express how I'm feeling and not make you feel less. And like I said, at the end of the day, you're just trying to work through conflict, or you're not trying to make a point. But sometimes, you're not going to get it right 100%. So when you don't, how can you work on yourself so that you're able to express yourself better, right? I really hope that, you find some value in this video, and remember that, communication is key to everything. I think communication as people, it sets the tones for the types of relationships you're going to cultivate. So really hone into these things, these skills, the way that you are, the way that you perceive things, the way that you receive things, and have grace with people, have patience, and love them, respect them, and uplift them always. I hope you come back next week. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. And remember that I love you, but the Lord loves you more. Always, always, always. God bless.